He was a darling baby. Madam Layton, one of the nurses who took care of the daily needs of the royal baby, told the Boston Globe in 1960. During the royal visit of Their Majesties the King and Queen at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge on the outskirts of Boston, Massachusetts, in the USA. His parents were very modest, not wanting all the pomp and circumstance. Even the birth certificate carries the ordinary name after his father, His Royal Highness Prince Mahidol of Songkhla, who was then studying medicine at Harvard University. After seeing the room where he was born, King Bhumibol exclaimed, "It is quite something to stand in the room in which you were born." On Monday, the 5th of December, 1927 at 8:45, the Princess Mother, Somdet Prasi Nakarintara Baromaraja Chonani, then known as Mom Sangwan, the wife of Prince Mahidol, gave birth to their youngest son. It could have been by chance that King Prachatipok, King Rama VII, named the newborn prince. Bhumibol, which means the great strength of the land. The following year, the Mahidol family, including Prince Mahidol Adunyadet, Kromakun Songkhla Nakarin, Mom Sangwan, their only daughter, Princess Kalyani Watana, and sons, Prince Ananta Mahidol, and the youngest son, Prince Bhumibol, were on their way back to their homeland. Leaving behind the family residence where they lived until Prince Mahidol graduated as a doctor of medicine cum laude, and the happy days of a quiet commoner's life which he wished he could live in that modest flat at 63 Longwood Avenue, Brooklyn, on the outskirts of Boston. Sapatum Palace was then the residence of the Dowager Queen Sawang Watana, King Bhumibhol's paternal grandmother. At the time, the palace was considered a residence in the less populated suburbs of Bangkok. Fringed hibiscus trees lined the length of the fence, while mango trees bearing their fruits were grown in large numbers deep into the residential compound. Set in idyllic surroundings, the air of the palace was filled daily with the cries from noisy magpies and songs from birds, which made their homes in the big trees of the palace grounds. The simple architecture of the newly built palace, which blended seamlessly with the setting of the quiet suburbs, pleased Prince Mahidol immensely, for despite his regal standing, he preferred a home to a palace. But the joy of the royal Mahidol household was not to last long. The frail but hard-working Prince Mahidol eventually succumbed to a serious illness and passed away on the 24th of September 1939. Leaving the 29-year-old widow, Mom Sangwan Mahidol na Ayutthaya, as head of a family of 3 children. No doubt, the onus of raising 3 young children had practically taken all her time, but to some extent, it also helped ease the grief over the loss of her husband. However, Prince Mahidol's perspective on life, combined with the princess mother's nursing and public health background, which she had acquired during her days in the US, were translated into excellent techniques and approaches toward the upbringing of her children. It was no surprise, therefore, that she appreciated the value of play as much as she did with the importance of healthcare and education. As a result, the Royal Siamese Survey Department was asked to create a Siamese map jigsaw puzzle for the royal children to enjoy as a fun game and simultaneously learn something about Siam. The jigsaw set was subsequently presented to the royal children in a nice wooden box. Thus, the youngest of the 3 children had been familiar with the map of Siam since his early age of 5 years old. Years later, the same map on a 1 to 50,000 scale has passed through the monarch's eyes on countless occasions and has eventually become one of his most resourceful sources of information for every development project. Thailand is ideal for human settlement, but she must be protected to prevent her farmland and orchards from turning into deserts. Since the serene surroundings and the clean air of Sapatum Palace were favorable to the children's development in the open air, the princess mother allocated a certain play area for the children's diverse outdoor games and activities. Wooden blocks, like those found in public parks overseas, were used to keep sand, while buckets and other kinds of blocks were common in this area. Bonfire became safe being contained in a drum. The sand-strewn open playhouse with all kinds of exercise equipment provided the children with a shelter from the scorching sun. Yet, they shared one special interest in games that involved water. The princess mother had the wooden water containers filled with such playthings as cups and plates, dolls, and empty coconut shells. With his keen sense of observation, the youngest prince followed the way water was directed into the basin for the children to play, with the basin being positioned at a lower angle and the ditch smoothened to prevent water leakage and facilitate water flow. Clay was used to coat the surface of the ditch, which was then smoothened with a roller to ensure that no pebbles or blobs of earth were in the way. Apparently, he remembered the method well even in his more senior years. The 3-year-old Pumipon and his eldest brother built a small pond and dug a passage mimicking a canal into which water was poured and allowed to flow. The twigs they gathered from the bushes were supposedly planted around and by the sides of the canal. Who would have imagined that those tiny hands that played the tree planting game would grow into strong and sturdy hands that helped support many lives through soil and water conservation efforts. The flourishing flora and grains on the highlands of the north are well known around the globe under the Royal Project banner. It was a success story as opium cultivations were reduced and the slash and burn farming became a thing of the past. His Majesty advised approaches to conserving the watersheds and rehabilitating millions of acres of denuded forest land. He also introduced the soil teasing theory to rehabilitate acidic and saline soil. It's a matter of the need for study and concepts which do not exist in textbooks. Typhoon Gay eroded the land with its torrents and caused extensive landslide. The devastating rushes of uprooted trees on the torrential water compounded the situation with heavy casualties in life and property. Prompted by that major catastrophe, His Majesty King Bhumibol decided to study the nature of Thailand's topography to find ways to fight this seemingly invincible foe. So what's vetiver? He put this question to his close aides in 1991, when it suddenly occurred to him that most of them mainly used vetiver grass to cover the roofs of their houses. Using part of a technical paper by the World Bank, which was then trying hard to promote vetiver grass, His Majesty explored the subject and started his field experiments. Before he made public his findings on the importance of vetiver in soil conservation and the subsequent adoption of the grass in the country. Merely 2 years after, the International Erosion Control Association, IECA, recognized His Majesty's outstanding achievement with the International Merit Award for 1993 for his exemplary role in introducing the public to the use of vetiver for soil and water conservation. When opportunity arose for a visit to Klaikangwon Palace in Prachuap Khiri Khan Province, the children not only enjoyed swimming in the sea, but were also fond of digging and shaping the sand into a pond or swimming pool, mimicking a small reservoir on the beach in front of the palace. The young prince waited anxiously for high tides until the water filled the small reservoir he dug. Once the seawater lowered, the water in his reservoir was already full to the rim. He then made long grooves in the sand to let the water spread over the loose sandy area. As he was doing so, he delightfully watched the water flow from his reservoir along each ditch. His Majesty the King's immense contribution to millions of acres of farmland through thousands of royally initiated water projects is no doubt attributed to that happy childhood experience of irrigation work on the sand. The Princess Mother encouraged her children to keep pets of all kinds, be they dogs, rabbits, birds, or even monkeys. It was the little monkey from which His Majesty drew the inspiration to formulate a flood management system. I remember that as a 5-year-old child, I had pet monkeys and fed them with bananas, which they would munch and save some in their cheeks. It follows, therefore, that the Cheek Project was originated way back since we were 5 years old. His Majesty observed the way the monkeys munched the bananas and saved some inside their cheeks before they gradually swallowed it. This primate habit set in motion the idea of the Monkey Cheek Project, a system aimed at taming the impact of seawater surges using a mechanism that is in harmony with nature. By applying the principle similar to the primate habit of saving bananas in their cheeks, the Monkey Cheek Project serves to temporarily store and release excess water to sea to make space for future water retention purposes. Artificial rain was first conceived in 1955, but not much was done at the time. In November 1954, the northeastern region was suffering from an extremely dry season and drought. At the time of His Majesty's arrival, the targeted site was an area between Kuchinarai and Sahasakan districts. It is known today as Somdet district. We parked there to visit the villages. It was dry and dusty. We asked them how they fared this year. It was awful, they responded. It was dry and no rain on the one hand, but floods on the other. We keep the floods in mind. After inspecting the local topography, His Majesty suggested the construction of check dams to regulate the water flow and allow for subsequent use in dry seasons. But observing the clouds in the sky, I asked myself, why this kind of cloud? How could they be pushed to a lower altitude? Having heard of artificial rainmaking before, I mentioned it to Kunteparit. The first experiment of royal rainmaking took place in 1969. The principle of artificial rainmaking, subsequently known as royal rainmaking, had since been established with the King's intent to have it integrated as part of water resources management. Further development made it possible to keep the rainmaking process under control in two aspects, namely the increase of rain and the distribution of rain over targeted areas. The term sufficiency implies adequacy in terms of consumption and usage, sufficient both in household and agro-industrial usage.
เน้นเรื่องการใช้ดินน้ำลมไฟและใช้ดินน้ำลมไฟเพื่ออะไรเพื่อประโยชน์ของตัวของประชาชนเองและประโยชน์แรกนั้นคือเรื่องอาหาร
The kindergarten classes at the palace for the youngest Mahidol were forced to come to a close with the departure of Princess Kalyani Watana's English instructor, Mrs. Davies, who returned home with her family. In 1932, Prince Bhumibol had to attend school at Mater Dei School. On June the 24th that same year, Siam saw a major political change from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy, with the king remaining the head of state. Although the Dowager Queen Sawangwatana, head of Sapatum Palace and King Rama VII's aunt, held no ruling authority, but the impact of political changes in the country landed squarely on the doorsteps of her peaceful palace, and with it an important mission that she alone had to administer. The Dowager Queen Sawangwatana loved her 3 grandchildren dearly, hence a profound bond among them. She was well aware of the wind of change that was looming, as Her Royal Highness Princess Kalyani Watana recalled in her book. The prince's physical condition was far from healthy. The Dowager Queen Sawangwatana concluded that the upheaval of the country could implicate her grandchildren, and it could be a good opportunity for us to remain in a foreign country to study and for the restoration of his health. Mother said it never occurred to her that way. Still, she agreed to the idea. In 1933, the princess mother and her 3 children were on their way to Lausanne, Switzerland. Upon arriving there, they moved into a 5-room flat on Tissot Road. the royal children attended school at École Miamont. At a more advanced age, the two royal brothers moved to Le Foyer, a school in the Les Pléiades. Prince Mahidon was particularly fond of Switzerland, where French, German, and Italian were the three main languages spoken. This was a democratic state which knew no monarchic rule. That Switzerland never really knows royalty, people do not address other people by their title of prince or princess, but limit it to Mr. and Miss, and because traditionally French has no titles for boys or girls, that therefore makes us commoners like other people. Although living half the world apart, the princess mother regularly wrote her mother-in-law, the Dowager Queen Sawangwatana. It is extremely difficult to raise children using reasoning and explanation to point out what is right and wrong. Fortunately, I read a lot of books on child raising. Those books provided so much helpful advice. But children are different. Therefore, one has to rely on one's personal intuition to apply the approach that best suits the children. I consider myself fortunate because the children are smart, but smart kids present more upbringing challenges compared with dumb ones. You have to elaborate and must be at pains to explain and make them believe what you say. However, the normal correspondence from the daughter-in-law containing private matters took a dramatic turn, for the great distance between them could barely protect members of the Mahidon family, then trying to lead a simple life from the enormity of the task ahead of them. After the coup, King Prachadipok announced his abdication whilst at his residence in England, but he also indicated his intent to have an heir apparent named in accordance with palace law. First in line to succeed to the throne was His Royal Highness Prince Ananta, Prince Songklar's elder son. Thus, no distance, even oceans apart, could prevent the storms from the shore of Siam with their messages of great burden from reaching the Mahidon family. Following the meeting with the government representatives, the Princess Mother wrote Queen Sawangwatana a letter on the 10th of April 1935. I made it absolutely clear, again, that my children and I had no ambition for honor or wealth. But if Nanta was to accept the throne, it was done out of a sense of duty to the motherland. Therefore, what pursues should be done properly without coercion or extreme denial of freedom. As far as physical and educational requirements are concerned, let them enjoy unreserved benefits. As children, let them enjoy their childhood. For a monarch with weak physique and poor mental agility would only cause the country to have a poor image. Concurring with the government, the Princess Mother and her family moved to Villa Vatana in Puyi, a small town in the immediate vicinity of Lausanne. The new residence is an old 3-story building. If forced to lead a full kingly lifestyle, which will not benefit the children in any way, they will find it disorienting and will be miserable. Thus, to be king is unlikely, as we will not live pompously, but properly, which will neither hurt the family name nor prove improper in any way. At that point, King Ananta Mahidon and his younger brother were enrolled in a public school for foreign students called École Nouvelle de la Suisse Romande. where both opted for liberal arts, taking Latin and English lessons, with German being compulsory. The two royal brothers spent the first or last 2 years at boarding school, since the princess mother wanted them to learn to be self-reliant. Extramural classes like gardening and carpentry were also offered by the school. The youngest prince, however, had developed a sense of detail and love of construction at the tender age of 8 years old. That the princess mother wisely chose to delight the royal children with presents only on special occasions, such as birthdays or the New Year, gave the two royal brothers ample opportunities to invent what they wanted by themselves, especially Prince Bhumibol, whose personal motto was an adopted Buddhist adage, Katte Ramate, those who delight themselves make their own things. Thus, the youngest Mahidol boy had been prolific in inventing and modifying his own toys, a skill he continued to develop well into his adulthood. On one occasion, he bought a set of used transformer-driven trains, which he later turned them into electric toy trains by connecting the old stretched coils to power wire. The royal brothers pooled their savings together to buy radio parts from the Swiss flea market. They put the parts together to build a cat whisker antenna-based radio by following the step-by-step instructions of the manual on radio connection and successfully made it work. His Majesty's interest in battleships and aircraft, especially those employed during World War I, took place between the ages of 12 to 14. He bought books on naval combat to study and collected books on battleships and model ships. Prince Bhumibol's mechanical skills were so advanced that he could build his own model fighter planes and battleships. Among His Majesty's inventions was a model of the HMS Ayutthaya, which he donated to a charity auction in 1946. His Majesty's aptitude for mechanics and technology has expanded to cover many other areas even after he acceded to the throne. Early in His Majesty's reign, efficient infrastructure in Thailand was rare. Walkie-talkies were the essential means of communication, critical in the country's development and national security, but they were very costly. Developing effective aerials for domestic use was a likely alternative to make Thailand more self-reliant. Drawing on the scientific resources from his school days, His Majesty did more research and explored other possibilities with experts. He personally modified the aerial to ensure that its potential could be fully developed. He asked the army, the academia, and scientists in Thailand to conduct a joint study based on the criteria he set for 4 versions of aerial for several purposes, and an additional one known as Royal Sausage for government operatives working in forested areas.
สิ่งที่น่าสังเกตคือยังไม่เคยมีใครทำไกลถึงขนาดนี้นะการติดต่อสื่อสารก็ไกลบ้างอะไรอย่างนี้นะครับหรือในป่านะซึ่งสายอากาศพิเศษที่ท่านพระราชทานชื่อเป็นไส้กรอกหลวงอะไรอย่างนี้นะครับซึ่งผมว่าเป็นเรื่องที่บ่งบอกถึงพระอัจฉริยภาพของพระองค์ท่านนะฮะ
To help the farmers, His Majesty instructed Mom Rajawong Theparit Thewakul and his team to develop several farm machines, including tractors and rice mills for the Pingao rice grains. The Makasan Sub-Canal is a large, polluted swamp located right in the heart of Bangkok. It also polluted the air with its choking stench. King Bhumibol made a thorough study of the condition after his personal visit to the area and initiated steps to ease the problem by adopting the good water to drive out bad approach. Finally, inspired by the rural folks' water wheel, he invented an aerator. Initially, His Majesty had two designs in mind. RX-5C blows air through the water surface to make the foam spread, while RX-2, eventually known as the Chaipatana aerator, slowly adds oxygen to the water surface. The materials needed for the aerator are easy to source and can be installed either as stationary or mobile units. Thus, it has become the world's 9th water treatment device.
ตัวปฏิบัติสองการที่ทำให้เกิดประสิทธิภาพกังหันน้ำที่มันตักน้ำลงมาเนี่ยไม่มีใครมาเจาะรูเหมือนเราส่วนใหญ่ก็จะเหมือนตักแล้วก็เทไปเลยก็เทเป็นก้อนน้ำที่มันสาดกระจายเหมือนน้ำพุเนี่ยถ้าสาดกระจายเท่าไหร่มันก็เติมอากาศได้ดีซึ่งไม่มีใครทำเหมือนเราหรอกแล้วก็เป็นคล้ายๆว่าเป็นสิทธิบัตรเครื่องที่9ของโลกเลยซ้ำไปไม่ซ้ำซ้อนกันใหญ่ถ้าเราทำตามที่รับสั่งแล้วก็เอาไปทดลองทอดให้ถวายทอดพระเนตรท่านก็จะวินิจฉัยดูไอ้นี่มันยังมีข้อบกพร่องอะไรบ้างอย่างยกตัวอย่างเช่นว่ากังหันน้ำใจมานานเนี่ยมันหมุนรอบช้าแล้วก็ซองมันไม่ใช่ซองถี่เป็นซองเป็นต่างห่างอย่างนั้นเวลาเดินเครื่องหรืออะไรเงี้ยมันก็มีการโยกตัวนะครับโยกขึ้นโยกลงไอ้ตรงนี้เนี่ยท่านก็บอกว่าอย่างนี้ทำไงจะหายโยกถามผมก็ไม่รู้จะตอบท่านยังไงท่านบอกเอางี้ดีกว่าใช้ไฮโดรฟอยล์ก็เลยไปเสริมแผ่นไฮโดรฟอยล์ตัวนี้แหละเป็นตัวเสริมประสิทธิภาพแหละ
Following the king's visit to Germany to observe the construction of coastal defense motorboats in 1960, he believed that with the vast experience of the Department of Royal Naval Dockyard in boat building since the days of King Rama V, coupled with its foreign-educated top brass, it was likely the Royal Thai Navy had all the resources to build boats for domestic use. With that notion, he gave them the Lersenwerft, the naval technical documents for them to study. The king also gave the Royal Thai Navy additional initiatives and advice on the use of high horsepower engines, proper speeds, and the kind of weapons to be installed on board. The construction of offshore patrol vessels, OPV, comprises 9 vessels from OPV 91 to OPV 99. The initiative began in 1963. 20 years later, the construction of the fleet of 9 vessels was completed. Subsequently, following His Majesty's royal advice, the Royal Thai Navy built a second set of Tor .991, OPV 991, which was finished in 2007. Although her son was now a ruling monarch, the princess mother continued to care for them using both the textbook approach and the traditional way of raising children, the commoner's way. She balanced their time between class, play, and socializing. However, health was also important. The little princess and her 2 princely brothers had their routine set to ensure they learned discipline, but never under too much stress. In the princess mother, the royal children had found an ideal role model through whom they learned to keep things in order or carry out simple chores like keeping their bedrooms tidy and making their own beds. The learning experience continued on weekends and school vacations, where the princess mother took her royal children on outings to places of importance or interest, including museums, the zoo, and waterfalls. More than 3 decades later, King Bhumibol remembered those fond memories in his many addresses, saying, "What we saw as children at school or in museums would leave us with fruit for thought." Lining both sides of the riverbanks from the province of Samut Prakan to Bangkok were packed crowds of people waving flags with warm welcoming cheers. It was undoubtedly a clear display of a public overjoyed by the sight of their young monarch for the first time. King Ananta returned to Thailand temporarily in November 1938 after the Siamese government made 4 attempts to invite him back to Thailand. The bond between the monarch and his subjects that had been interrupted temporarily for 4 years was now rekindled. In addition to carrying out the daily functions on his official agenda, he took time off at the Princess Mother's request to visit temples and important places of ancient monuments in Bangkok and Thonburi to learn more about Thai art and culture. On nearly all occasions, King Ananta was seen accompanied by his younger brother, who became affectionately known as Jiao Fa Wen or Tan Wen, the bespectacled prince. Years after our return to Switzerland, I met Kru Ash, who confided in me that mother did not really like staying in Thailand. But the children did and must have enjoyed it. We had new toys nearly every day. One day it was an electric toy car. On another day it was a real car on loan to play with. There was an electric car on the deck of which we sat, an actual airplane, and rowboat. For me, I'd rather have a gramophone, but they came in lots once you made your wish known. Mother must have been apprehensive that a longer stay would spoil the children. Despite King Ananta's brief 2-month stay in Thailand, the seedling of loyalty had already taken root in the hearts of the Thais. Soon after the outbreak of World War II, the government changed the name of the country from Siam to Thailand to boost nationalist sentiment. Laws regulating civilians' practices were passed with the connotation of coercing the Thais to accept his role as the country's head of state. Across the Atlantic, the impact of World War II had intensified, with the risk of it being felt by non-aligned Switzerland. The Princess Mother, however, decided to stay put. Despite the fact that she and her young family had to rely on rations just like any other Swiss citizen. It was apples all the time. After the war, I don't feel like eating apples anymore. Like his elder brother, Prince Bhumibol went to Lausanne University to pursue an engineering degree. Gasoline was in severe shortage during wartime. The two brothers therefore went to university on their bicycles. One activity the two royal brothers enjoyed doing together was playing musical instruments. King Ananta began with the piano after seeing his sister learning it. The youngest prince, however, took up accordion, although this did not last long on account that it did not go well with piano. As the two royal brothers subsequently turned their interest to woodwinds and found their preferred styles of music, the Princess Mother decided to commission Weibrecht, an Alsace, to give music lessons including basic music score writing and classical works to the two boys to ensure they had a sound foundation. Later, King Bhumibol also received further music advice from Prajen Duriyang. His Majesty had all of Kun Prajane's compositions printed and managed to learn a great deal of musical knowledge while going through the proofreading stage during the publishing process. What he did not understand, he rechecked with Kun Prajane. Prince Bhumibol made his first attempt with jazz by practicing the saxophone to the strains of the gramophone recordings of renowned jazz idols of the day. Regarding his favorite gramophones, if they were for sheer pleasure, he would pay for them by himself. However, for classical, he could get reimbursed by the prince's mother, as they were needed for his music classes. King Bhumibol was good at playing musical instruments, both woodwind or brass. Most of them were used instruments that he acquired using his pocket money and some contribution from the prince's mother. Piano was one of an assortment of musical instruments that he played but never really pursued. Basically, he taught himself by reading musical notes, teaching himself choral approaches, and taking up guitar at around 16 years old. Then, about the age of 16 to 17 years old, he tried the flute, as he felt the instrument wasn't too expensive and was relatively easy to handle, using fingers to control it the way one does with a saxophone. I saw him playing the violin some time later. Probably he taught himself to play the classical guitar without a music teacher. Prince Bhumibol wrote his first song, Candlelight Blues, when he was 18 years old. 47 more compositions followed from 1946 to 2005. Jazz or no jazz, music is a part of me. Indeed, it is in each of us and plays a great role in our life. As a king, His Majesty put his musical virtuosity to public benefits on several occasions. Early in his reign, while taking residence at the Ampon Villa, the government presented His Majesty with a shortwave transmitter to set up an all-song SAW radio broadcasting station where he started broadcasts of live performances that allowed live phone-ins to make requests for songs and donations for public health causes, as well as relief aid to victims of natural disasters. On those occasions, he would join in on its live broadcasts every Friday evening with other musicians and his aides. For some 10 years during his early reign, the king performed at the invitation of varsity musical bands. These were private activities where he made speeches and developed a closer tie with the students. In 1964, His Majesty's compositions were performed by the NQ Tonkanzler Orchestra with live broadcast to the enthusiastic approval of the Austrians across the country. 2 days after the live broadcast, he was conferred with the 23rd honorary membership of the world-renowned Institute of Music and Arts of the city of Vienna. In most of the royal musical compositions, His Majesty wrote the scores while the lyrics were filled in by others. Nonetheless, each of the compositions was always the fruit of his personal persuasion and circumstances. Royal permission was granted to the Anti-Tuberculosis Association of Thailand to play Love at Sundown at its fundraising campaign. His Majesty's composition, Near Dawn, was first played at the meeting of the Poultry Promotion Association of Thailand. He encouraged the blind with his composition Smiles. Those performing their duties in national defense were also remembered in royal compositions. What was achieved thus far was due to the collective support of the musicians, composers, singers, and the audiences who expressed their appreciation and considerable support, all of whom had until now been encouraging to me. Some royal compositions were meant to solicit feedback. and improvement of the scores from other musicians, an approach we called cooperative composition. Music is an emotional expression of a group of people. Here it is the Thai people who will express it or appreciate the way it is expressed. As musicians, you are playing an extremely important role. Regardless of whether you are a composer, a singer, or any other type of artist, may your expression be constructive and conducive to the noble acts and advancement of the public. By the end of World War II in 1945, King Rama VIII made his second homecoming visit to Thailand at the invitation of the government. The seedling of bonding between the monarch and his subjects, planted some 7 years ago, had now grown admirably, with huge crowds turning up to welcome the king, who as usual was accompanied by his younger brother. What was originally planned as a one-month trip for the young king to return to Switzerland in time for the new school year was extended on several occasions. During his stay, King Ananta Mahidol sealed the new constitution with his signature and presided over the opening of the National Assembly on June 1st, 1946. On June 3rd, the king and his younger brother made an official visit to the Chinese community at Sampeng. However, when the Sampeng residents heard about the planned royal visit, a grand preparation to welcome the king was quickly organized, with shophouses decked with Thai flags, offering tables set and Chinese symphonies arranged. All the communal hatchets were now buried, with the Chinese, Indians, and the Thais lining the streets awaiting the royal arrival. Despite His Majesty's brief sojourn in Thailand, the seedling of bonding had flourished into a protective shelter for one and all. King Rama VIII was scheduled to return to Switzerland on the 13th of June following several postponements. I don't know if everything is ready or there will be more problems at the last minute. The anticipated apprehension finally took place on June 9th, 1946, when the king died suddenly of a gunshot. The National Assembly unanimously passed a resolution to pass the crown to the youngest Mahidol. From the epilogue of Princess Kalyani Watana's book, เจ้านายเล็กๆยุวกษัตริย์ Alfred de Vigny's poem was cited as if representing her inner thought on the event. Until the mount cleared and Moses was no longer there, the people mourned. And Joshua led to the land God has promised the Jewish, pensive pale, for he was already the elected of God. On the 18th of August, 1946, the new king paid his last respects to his late brother. The following morning, His Majesty was due for a flight to Switzerland. The royal motorcade to the airport was slowly making its way through the crowds of well-wishers. From the large crowd around his vehicle, a lone voice said, "Don't forget the people, Your Majesty," which caught his attention. I had wanted to reply that if the people do not forsake me, how can I forsake them? But the instant did not allow him to make the reply, as the royal vehicle was inching ahead. From a small family of mother, an elder sister, and a brother, on a brief home visit trip, there was no more preparation than a white loose outfit, a straw hat, and a camera, which seemed to be the only personal effects then, but that was heartwarming enough. Yet, sorrow replaced the once familiar warmth of Villa Vatana. The princess mother did not remain idle, but busied herself with different activities. Besides gardening, which was her favorite hobby, she spent time on other things, including handicraft, writing, pottery, taking up classes in philosophy, literature, French, Bali, and Sanskrit languages. While the young king had to give up his much-loved science to pursue a more practical program of law, political, and social sciences. In liberal arts, he is fluent in English, French, German, and Latin. Languages are instrumental to pursuits of knowledge and communication. Thanks to His Majesty's multilingual skills, it was possible for him to pursue, search, and access sources of sciences in the international arena quickly and conveniently.
ศึกษาด้วยวิธีการต่างๆของพระองค์ท่านจากสื่อไอทีบ้างอะไรบ้างเพราะพระองค์ท่านเก่งเรื่องนี้แล้วท่านอ่านภาษาได้ดีกว่าพวกเราใช้ภาษาได้ค่อนข้างลึกซึ้งแล้วศึกษาอะไรต่างๆได้อย่างรวดเร็วภาษาอังกฤษท่านก็แม่นเพราะท่านเกิดเติบโตในต่างประเทศท่านก็เป็นหลายภาษาแล้วก็ท่านก็มีพูดง่ายๆถ้าเทียบภาษาเราคือท่านมีเพื่อนเยอะท่านมีคอนเน็กชันเชื่อมโยงกับผู้รู้เยอะแยะเราก็รับพระดำริมาก็รีบออกไปทำ
His Majesty took such additional classes as agriculture and architecture, in particular comparative study of European geography and history with Thailand's. The Princess Mother recognized the great importance of both formal and non-formal education at the early stage of her children's lives. Occasionally in their spare time, King Rama IX and his mother would visit the countryside and neighboring countries on trips to see places of importance in different towns and cities. As a boy, His Majesty enjoyed having his tutor reading him short stories 10 to 15 minutes before they started classes. He made sure he understood what he studied. When in doubt, he would seek answers from the Princess Mother. What she did not know, she would consult the encyclopedia for the answers. The Thai Junior Encyclopedia was thus inspired by His Majesty's childhood experience. The first volume was published in 1973, with further publications of additional volumes nearly every year. Encyclopedias are no teachers, but they can somehow help those who are not teaching professionals to perform their duties. They are written by local specialists for local readers using domestic resources, while certain external criteria which the foreigners have set out as examples are maintained. Unique approaches suitable to Thai people are adopted, without the need of having to toe the line of the education ministry or stick to foreign methods. Since His Majesty settled permanently in Thailand in 1951, the country has gone through some of the most challenging problems, ranging from poverty to economic volatility, insurgency to Cold War struggles, and natural disasters to such endemic diseases as leprosy and AIDS, all of which affected the country's education, which is crucial to the development of the Thai population. On average, education in the Thai system tends to cease by the time one finishes Prathom Si or Grade 4, a situation which is extremely worrying for the future. Indeed, His Majesty the King is the patron of education whose support encompasses a comprehensive range of areas and levels, from primary education to higher education, both at home and abroad, through such King's scholarships as the Bhumibol Grant and Mahidol Grant. The schools under His Majesty the King's royal patronage not only provide formal education, but also exist to give the underprivileged the opportunity to become self-reliant through education like that at Prat Dabot School. In tandem with this concept of education, the schools under royal patronage adopt a comprehensive approach to education whereby students are given both technical knowledge and ethical values which could only be materialized through consistent training. Teaching involves training and instilling discipline into the students, through which habit is formed. With no one to do the job, or with only incompetent individuals for that matter, the result would be equally poor, or worse, despite the privilege of advanced technology. The growing population and settlement expansion have contributed to a greater gap of differences in urban and rural education, with increased pressure on the shortage of teaching personnel. As a result, a radio and television broadcasting station for the transmission of distance learning programs via satellite was set up to transmit teaching and learning sessions from Wang Klaikangwon School to its school network nationwide. Prince Bhumibol had a rich and colorful childhood, as the princess mother stressed the importance of educational trips. That childhood experience had been the inspiration behind his initiative to start an educational trip program to enable the students to broaden their perspectives outside the normal classroom setting. On certain occasions, His Majesty personally led the trip. In 1948, King Bhumibol visited an automobile assembly plant in Paris, where he first met Mom Rachawong Sirikit Kitayakon, the younger daughter of His Serene Highness Prince Nakhatara Mongkon and Mom Luang Bua Kitayakon. On the 19th of July, 1949, they were engaged in a quiet engagement ceremony in accordance with the wishes of the princess mother. Let it be a family affair, because I did the same in my case. Are there any objections? The modest diamond ring for the engagement was less than 2 carats, but was priceless in its sentimental value since it had once belonged to the princess mother, her very own engagement ring from Prince Songkla. Four years after the demise of King Rama VIII, the young king Bhumibol, together with his fiancée and elder sister Princess Kalyani Watana, boarded the Selandia on their journey home to attend the royal cremation ceremony of his late brother, King Ananta. The princess mother was unable to join them due to a sustained injury in a car accident. More importantly, said her daughter in an interview on the 28th of June 1982, she said she couldn't make it to the cremation ceremony. Since she couldn't come, she'd rather stay put. On the 30th of March, King Bhumibol mounted the cremation pavilion where he lit the candles, made offerings to the royal ashes, and sprinkled holy water. He then collected and transferred the ashes of the late King Rama VIII to the royal urn. The following day, the royal ashes were deposited on the altar of Phra Sri Sakaya Muni at the royal temple of Wat Sutat Thepolalam. News about the death of her grandson, or even the royal cremation ceremony, was kept under wraps from the 88-year-old Dowager Queen Sawangwattana, for fear that she would find the continuing losses of members of the royal household too devastating. Anything to suggest the sad incident was a mere hunch 4 years ago, at the time when the royal corpse was encased in the royal urn. There on the balcony of her palace, the Dowager Queen Sawangwattana was watching the twilight sky and after a while murmured, "What's with it today? The sky looks so sad. Not a single bird or raven is around to sing. Why is it so dreadfully quiet?" After so many years, the quiet Sat Patum Palace on Friday the 28th of April 1950 suddenly came to life for the royal residence of the Dowager Queen Sawangwattana was to witness the happy wedding of King Bhumibol and his soon-to-be queen. The following morning, the newly married couple left for Klaikangwon Palace for their honeymoon. On the 5th of May 1950, a week after his wedding, King Bhumibol Adulyadej took his ceremonial throne beneath the 9-tiered white umbrella of state and officially assumed his kingship in the coronation of ancient tradition in Paisan Taksin Throne Hall. The king poured the holy water and made his solemn vow to reign by the tenfold moral principles of the sovereign in his first royal utterances. I shall reign with righteousness for the benefits and happiness of the Siamese people. King Rama IX assumed his official title พระบาทสมเด็จพระปรมินทรมหาภูมิพลอดุลยเดชมหิตลาธิเบศรรามาธิบดีจักรีนฤบดินทรสยามินทราธิราชบรมนาถบพิตร On that occasion, his queen was elevated to the title of สมเด็จพระนางเจ้าสิริกิติ์พระบรมราชินี Her Majesty Queen Sirikit. King Bhumibol Adulyadej remained in Thailand for another month before he returned to Switzerland to receive further treatment for his injury from his 1948 car accident. Early in December 1949, the country celebrated His Majesty's permanent return to Thailand after Queen Sirikit gave birth to their first daughter, Her Royal Highness Ubon Ratana Rachakanya Siriwatana Panawadi. Eventually, 3 more members joined the royal family with the arrivals of a son and 2 daughters. His Royal Highness Prince Vajiralongkorn, Her Royal Highness Princess Sirinthorn, and Her Royal Highness Princess Julaporn Walailak. In 1951, tuberculosis and leprosy had been 2 major diseases that threatened Thailand's public health. To address the problem, Mahidol Wongsanusorn building was built by royal command with construction funds coming from the Privy Purse as a center where BCG vaccine was produced mainly for tuberculosis prevention and subsequently for leprosy prevention. His Majesty's crusade against tuberculosis made it possible for the Science Division of the Thai Red Cross Society to produce tuberculosis vaccine for domestic use and sale to UNICEF, which used it continuously in Pakistan until 1963. Protein deficiency among a substantial portion of the Thai population prompted His Majesty to promote the consumption of fish, which was familiar to the Thais as an inexpensive and easily available source of protein. In 1952, at his prompting, the Fishery Department imported the first schools of fish called Pla Mortet or Tilapia mozambica, the fast-growing and easily bred freshwater fish from Penang for experiment in His Majesty's pool at the Ampon Villa. The trial was a great success, with fingerlings distributed to village headmen throughout the country for further propagation in natural waterways. 13 years later, the Crown Prince of Japan, the future Emperor Akihito, presented fish of the same species as a gift to His Majesty in 1965. Following the successful experiment in the pool of Jitlada Villa, the fingerlings were transferred to the Fishery Department for further propagation in its nationwide fishery stations for subsequent distributions to the public and propagation in streams and rivers. His Majesty called the fish planin, which is known by its technical term as Tilapia nilotica. Later, the crossbreeding between planin and Pla Mortet resulted in a new variation of fish the king called Thai red tilapia. The first Vejapa, the royal initiated vessel which was funded by the Privy Purse, was sailing on the Chao Phraya River on a mission to provide free medical services to the poor. The King's mobile medical vessel has since continued its mission of providing people with healthcare services, including treatments for and diagnoses of general illnesses, dental and hygienic care. Today, Hua Hin has evolved into one of Thailand's most developed resort towns. A far cry from the previously quiet fishing community with no road access to the city. During their Majesty's visit, the royal couple almost made it their routine to explore and locate the local people in the countryside to find out how they lived. From Hua Hin, they traveled the road to practically all the small villages in Prachuap Khiri Khan, Phetchaburi and Ratchaburi provinces. Those trips resulted in a variety of modest projects, including classes for village children and the Khao Tao weaving plant, where weaving and handicrafts based on the skills of the unemployed were promoted. In 1963, Khao Tao Reservoir became the first royal initiative as a local source of water supply. While His Majesty's nationwide visit started in the Central Plains in 1955, rural development initiatives were already underway in Hua Hin of Prachuap Khiri Khan province and elsewhere in Ratchaburi and Phetchaburi provinces. By the end of that year, the royal visits had covered the northeast of Thailand, a region known for its harsh conditions due to extensive deforestation, subsequent droughts, and flood intervals. It was the beginning of the cool season, so the weather was pleasantly cool, but it became colder after sunset. Yet during the day, it was windy and searing hot. The royal convoy had to drive through thick clouds of dust that seriously prevented visibility. Thus, all the vehicles had to keep the taillights on. Since air conditioning was non-existent then, keeping the side windows closed meant hot and stuffy conditions for passengers, but the open windows allowed the free flow of dust that forced everyone to keep their eyes closed. It was impossible not to burst out laughing at the sight of each other in that condition, some with hair covered in thick layers of dust that made them look more like Farangs with white hair and eyebrows. Others were almost beyond recognition. Their Majesties were probably slightly better off as the royal vehicle was leading the convoy. Apart from visiting police outposts and army camps, campaign activities and agricultural and irrigation experimental stations, His Majesty also gathered first-hand accounts of the people's livelihood and official reports, both on local conditions and problems, which gave him the basic information for the specific needs of each locality. He used still and motion cameras to document what he saw on his trips. King Rama IX developed an interest in photography when he was only a 6-year-old boy. He used his savings to purchase his first camera, an old-fashioned box camera, which cost 2.5 Swiss francs. At the time, a roll of film produced only 6 snapshots. During his 2 home visits to Thailand with his elder brother, King Ananta Mahidol, the photographs he took proved both valuable in terms of historic evidence and artistic perspectives, as they were taken from angles no other photographers could rival. In 1946, he donated the model aircraft and boats he made to an auction to raise funds for the Anti-Tuberculosis Association of Thailand. The monarch is always seen with a still camera when he is out and about. It is used to document a broad range of subjects, including his personal snapshots, nature, places, and other living creatures in different moods and styles. His long years of traveling in Thailand, both for his official engagements and those related to his royal-initiated projects, contributed greatly to to the consistent improvement of his photographic skills in aspects and diversity as evident in the photographs he took. In December 1953, a mood of melancholy again descended on Sapatum Palace, with the condition of the ailing Dowager Queen deteriorating to the point of crisis. The grandson, now a ruling monarch, remained standing at the foot of her deathbed until she breathed her last breath. He then cleaned her feet. It was 2:16 in the morning on the 17th of December. She was 93 years old. The body of the dead Dowager Queen, Sawangwatana, was encased in a highly ornate urn set beneath a 7-tiered white umbrella inside Dusit Mahaprasad Throne Hall. After the royal cremation ceremony on the 22nd of April 1946, His Majesty the King deposited the ashes of his paternal grandmother under the pedestal of Prasamputtawatanopat, the principal Buddha image of the Rachathirath Racha Varavihan Temple. 57 years later, the Dowager Queen was commemorated by UNESCO as a world personality in recognition of her achievements in education, health science, and cultural development and conservation. Luang Pu, in denouncing vices, what should be the first vice to be rid of? All vices are formed in the spirit. Focus on them. The one that emerges first is the one to get rid of first. I should spend some time in the monkhood in accordance with royal tradition, which serves as an expression of our belief of showing our gratitude to our royal ancestors. On the 22nd of October 1956, the king was ordained as a monk in the midst of the clerical assembly with the Supreme Patriarch, Somdet Phra Wachira Yanawong, presiding over the ordination ceremony. The newly ordained Phumi Palo Bhikkhu would use the Panya Pavilion in the compounds of Wat Bawar Nivet Vihan as his temporary living quarters. His Majesty the King had been familiar with the Buddhist custom of merit-making since his childhood years, as he customarily gave alms and freed birds and fish as part of his birthday celebration. On holidays, the Princess Mother took her children on outings to temples to study their architectural styles and mural paintings. The royal children were taught to say such short and simple bedtime prayers as, "May the Lord Buddha inspire," mentioning the names of each royal child, to be well-behaved and compassionate children. The royal monk cannot enter monkhood simply for the sake of royal tradition alone. His ordination must be genuine, based on conviction, fully committed to Buddhism, not like any common modernists who fail to see the religious context. As a Buddhist monk, His Majesty studied and observed all the clerical requirements, adhering to monastic rules just like any other novice. Fulfilling his morning alms round, offering incense sticks, candles, and flowers he received from the devoted to the Buddha when he performed his daily monastic obligations. While he was living the life of a Buddhist monk, his royal duties were carried out by his queen, who was acting as Queen Regent. On his birthday anniversary on the 5th of December that year, King Bhumibol, who had already left the monkhood a month earlier, elevated the title of the Queen to a higher level of queenship as Somdet Phra Nang Cha Phra Baroma Rachani Nath. The Buddha amulets His Majesty designed and made as gifts for his court attendants is known generally as Luang Pho Jitlada, or the strength of the land. As his birthday Buddha image, he cast the Buddha image of Praputa Nawalat Bopit in the subduing Mara attitude. This was subsequently reproduced into 100 units for distribution to nationwide temples. Under His Majesty's reign, the renovation of the Chapel Royal of the Emerald Buddha was undoubtedly a major undertaking. He trusted it to his daughter, Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn, as the Chief Executive Officer of the project to oversee the effort and make sure it was finished in time for the bicentennial celebrations of the founding of Bangkok. In 1985, by royal command, the Bali and the Thai translated versions of the Traipidok were revised with the entire undertaking completed in time for the auspicious celebration of His Majesty's 5th cycle birthday anniversary. When Mahidol University launched the world's first digital Traipidok initiative, His Majesty the King used his privy purse to fund the expansion of the initiative into a computerized development project for the study of the complete Thai and Romanized versions of the Traipidok and Atthakatha initiative, which was completed in 1994. The successful initiative not only benefits Thailand, but it also contributes significantly to international Buddhism study. Buddhist clerics also benefit from His Majesty's benevolence when he donated 13 million baht in 2004 to start the King's Scholarship Fund for Thai monks. As is traditional of Thai kings, His Majesty had the Royal Yana Sangwararam Wara Mahavihan Monastery and Wat Praram Gao Kanchanapisek built as the temples of his reign. Thai monarchs are Buddhist by tradition, but they are also upholders of other faiths. So while they are chief advocates of Buddhism, they also treat Thai citizens of other faiths in an equal manner. It is common knowledge that His Majesty never fails to respond favorably to invitations from all religious institutions and always graces their activities. He also makes donations to sustain other religions. Thus, when the Saudi Arabian envoy presented him with an English version of the Quran, His Majesty had it translated into the vernacular so that the local Muslims could study and understand the true meaning of the Holy Quran and adopt it appropriately. Even after his monastic days, His Majesty continues to pursue and practice Buddhist values. Buddhist monks specialized in meditation were invited to give meditation classes, which were recorded and distributed to court attendants. His Majesty said that if that is not possible, then the counting method is advised. He elaborated further, saying, "Count 1, inhale, count 1, exhale, count 2, inhale, count 2, exhale." His Majesty said he also practices his meditation this way. Can prayers be said constantly at all places? Prayers can be said constantly, regardless of place and time. By 1957, the renovation of the Jitlada Villa was over. Their Majesties have since made it their home. The royal train left the Jitlada train station on the 27th of February, 1958, taking its royal passengers, Their Majesties the King and Queen, on a mission to visit the people in northern Thailand. asphalt road was non-existent in the then underdeveloped Thailand. Stretches of the road on the route of royal visits were punctuated by rugged laterite roads, a condition similar to those in northeastern Thailand. It was like riding on the xylophone string. The car constantly rocked so hard it exhausted you. On hot, humid days, some of the people in the entourage were having a cold, while others were suffering from sunstroke. Even His Majesty admitted for the first time that he felt dizzy and had to endure a headache. Yet the royal couple did not give in, but continued to push on, realizing how difficult it must have been for the people who had patiently waited for the arrival since daybreak. In Chiang Mai, the king stopped at the McCormick Hospital, where his father, Prince Mahidol, the father of modern Thai medicine, spent his last working days before he passed away. The following year, their majesties were on the road again in March, on their way to the southern region, where packed crowds of both Buddhists and Muslims were awaiting. This is a similar show of love they experienced in all parts of the country. The royal visits to every region of the country also made it possible for the monarch to see the topographic and cultural differences which could otherwise have been evident in a basic country and population survey. His Majesty had since 1964 continued his visits to the people in Thailand's remote areas, pushing his way through thick forested areas, traveling on rugged terrains, and occasionally hampered by floods. Yet it seemed he had trained himself to be physically fit. When he had to climb high mountains, he once challenged members of his entourage that no matter how fast the Mao Hill tribe people walked, he would walk faster. In childhood Switzerland, His Majesty read extensively and enjoyed a great variety of sports, including water skiing, mountain skiing, hockey, ice skating, swimming, boat sailing, badminton, table tennis, tennis, shooting, and jogging. During 1959 to 1967, their Majesties embarked on an international relations mission with their state visits to countries in Asia, Europe, and the United States of America. On those trips, they had visited historic places and places of ancient monuments and witnessed the development of modern-day industrial plants, agriculture, and technology, which King Bhumibol subsequently expanded into countless royal initiatives. Over the next 2 decades, however, His Majesty remained in Thailand. It was not until 1994 when he set out on a trip to neighboring Laos People's Democratic Republic, where he presided over the inauguration ceremony of the landmark Thai-Lao Friendship Bridge. On the night of the 25th of October 1962, Typhoon Harriet hit Thailand, causing major casualties and extensive damage to properties in 12 southern provinces. But the Talumpuk Peninsula in Pak Panang district of Nakhon Si Thammarat was the hardest hit. His Majesty the King immediately summoned different relief agencies to provide urgent assistance to storm victims, along with his private donation and relief aid. What was left of the relief fund for that major disaster was used to establish the Ratchaprachanukra Foundation, which means King and Men's Mutual Aid. That initial humanitarian step continues to play an active role in assisting with disaster relief in almost all the natural disasters in Thailand, including the major earthquake in 2004 that caused the tsunami. Apart from providing initial assistance to the tsunami victims, the Ratchaprachanukra Foundation, in collaboration with the Development Divisions 1, 2, and 3 and the Engineering Department of the Royal Thai Army, completed the construction of 4 Ratchaprachanukra boarding schools for children affected by the disaster within a year after the devastation of the killer waves. His Majesty the King started using part of the compounds of his royal residence as a development research and experimental center in 1961 to find solutions to problems involving integrated agricultural development, energy, the conservation of natural resources, and the environment. The effort entailed both non-commercial and quasi-commercial models that enable interested parties to study and emulate. Meanwhile, the comprehensive rice research and experimental program was initiated to meet different requirements, including rice growing, a rice species bank, and rice milling experimentation using both the conventional pounding implements like mortar and pestle and modern-day machines, through to the packaging stage with sacks of rice ready for immediate distribution, either for relief aid to victims of natural disasters or sale to the public. Residues from the mill are recycled with rice bran, being used as animal feed, and rice husk packed into solid fuel. Thus, the entire production process is waste-free. His Majesty's Royal Dairy Project was initiated after the public and private sectors supplied him with the first herd of dairy cows. Using the money from his privy purse, he built them a shade and provided green pastures for them to feed and exercise. That marked the beginning of the experimentation of a modern dairy facility where artificial breeding and development of dairy cows suitable for local conditions could be carried out. As the original herd grew by the year with more calves and additional donations from the public, His Majesty made them available to dairy farmers and agriculture-related institutions of education. Subsequently, His Majesty had the Suan Dusit Dairy Factory built in response to the dairy farmers' petition on the issue of surplus milk. The factory was designed to produce powdered milk from the surplus milk he bought from the farmers. More technical research and development initiatives in the compounds of the Chitlada Villa resulted in a full-fledged dairy operation which now boasts a diverse range of commercial products that include powdered milk, milk tablets, pasteurized fresh milk, and cheese. Today, Jitlada Garden is no ordinary household garden. Rather, it is a place where animals are raised, experimental activities implemented, and production lines running. Other features in the garden include a demonstration forest, food products, organic fertilizers, solid fuel, and wastewater treatment experimentation. In mid-April 1966, His Majesty put his Vega, the boat he built in a sea trial trip from Glaikawon Palace, traversing the Gulf of Thailand to the coast of Tay Ngam Beach in the jurisdiction of the Royal Thai Marine Corps. On the 16th of December 1967, His Majesty took the boat he built, the Nawarug, to sea and finished with a gold medal in the OK boat race during the 4th Siep Games. In addition, the King also designed, built, and painted his 3 Moth-class boats, the Mot, Micro Mot, and Super Mot, small sailboats that better suit the moderately built Thais. His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej celebrated his Silver Jubilee on the 9th of June 1971. However, he made it clear to the government, which was planning a long list of celebratory activities for the occasion, to do it economically and give priority to the country's development. As a result, a cabinet resolution was passed to have a commemorative monument built in his honor. That too was rejected when His Majesty expressed his desire to have a road built for public benefit. He cited the examples of ring roads, similar to the freeways he saw in the USA, Britain, and Germany during his state visits to those countries. The government duly obliged with the construction of Rachada Pisek Road, which was completed in 1976. Her Royal Highness Princess Kalayani Watana once asked her young brother King Rama IX how his painting got started. His Majesty replied that it was started when Tan Chin brought a whole set of painting and implements including paintbrushes, colors and canvas, and others for Mama to paint. I was annoyed and decided to do the painting myself. His Majesty started his in-depth study on painting as early as 1937. He also visited studios to ask his preferred artists about their techniques, ranging from the choice of colors to the different kinds of brushes. Once he had a good grasp of the techniques, he started practicing his brushstrokes and began his creative works at about the age of 18 years old. He took painting seriously in 1959. His portfolio of approximately 100 pieces of artwork includes realist, impressionist, and abstract paintings. His Majesty told his close aides that he painted where his heart was, not under the influence of any particular person, theory, or convention. After he finished the Thai translation of A Man Called Intrepid and Tito, His Majesty commissioned the illustrations of his literary work, The Story of Mahachanok, an adaptation of a Buddhist tale. To Thailand's master artists who were given one single directive, that they exercise their freedom in their creative works of art. but His Majesty kept a close watch over the content and the nuances of the illustrations, which, in addition to his intention to demonstrate the teachings in the tale and his inner thoughts, also reflected his initiative and pool of knowledge in Buddhism, science, satellites, maps, history, geography, social science, nature, and the environment, as well as astrology in his approach to the story of Mahachanok. It may be surmised that the publication of the story of Mahachanok is meant to be an artistic representation of his reign, while its content amounts to the culmination of royal development initiatives based on his years of working experience since the early days of his reign. While the story is dominated by the virtue of perseverance, His Majesty's hidden message in the publication is that conservation and development should go hand in hand, and the objective of education is to promote both worldly knowledge and morality. The world was marked by a period of Cold War during 1947 to 1991. The world's two superpowers, with different political persuasions, communism in one camp and democracy in the other, had learnt their lessons from the Second World War and tried to shift the theater of war from their homelands to the Third World countries. To do so, they employed a range of tactics, including political, military, and economic interventions. Occasionally, force was used, and Thailand was no exception from this pressure. As Thailand's Supreme Commander, His Majesty visited soldiers and border patrol police even in dangerous battle zones, taking wounded soldiers under his care so they were given proper treatment. Vocational training was also given to both maimed and retired servicemen. Those visits took place alongside his regular visits to help alleviate the hardship of the country's impoverished, His Majesty's lifelong dedication that resulted in thousands of royal projects. Most are water-related initiatives introduced in response to the grievances of his people. Apart from the poor quality of natural soil, like peatland in the south and saline soil in the northeast, the deteriorating condition of the once arable agricultural land in almost all parts of the country was the result of well-intended development efforts. His Majesty quickly set up research units to address the issue. At the same time, land was allocated to farmers to enable them to make a living and also make certain they maintained the nutrient-rich soil to ensure sustainability and, in effect, put an end to migratory farming practices which would lead to further forest encroachment and subsequent deforestation. In 1977, the headman of Tambon Khao Hin Son presented His Majesty the King with 105.6 acres of land. It was a piece of degraded laterite land where no trees could grow. Immediately, His Majesty started his Khao Hin Son Royal Development Study Center there. Subsequently, 5 more centers were introduced to other parts of the country. Armed with research and experimental results, as well as development approaches appropriate for the environment and the way of life of the local people, His Majesty granted development advice to government agencies to take charge of their implementation. Such royally initiated centers are one of a kind in the world where integrated agricultural services are available. All the sites of Royal Development Study Centres shared a miserable start, but have gradually been restored to their full potential. Moreover, since every step of the research and experimental activities have been thoroughly documented, the Royal Development Study Centres, as they are called, still continue their study and experiment efforts in what His Majesty referred to as living museums. In 1993, in recognition of His Majesty's innovative and proven initiatives, the International Society of Chemical Ecology conferred on His Majesty the Natural Pro Futura Award for his efforts on the conservation of biodiversity. Also in 1993, the International Erosion Control Association recognized him as the world's prominent soil and water conservationist king with its International Merit Award. In 1988, King Bhumibol set up the Chai Patana Foundation to help facilitate his multifaceted initiatives. The new organization is free to help the Thai people and the country while providing support to all royal initiatives and development projects, independent of politics and government's development plans.
ชัยพัฒนาชัยชนะนั้นไม่ได้เกิดมาจากรูปราค่าฟันหรือเอาชนะด้วยอาวุธนั้นคือการพัฒนาพระองค์ท่านถือว่าเป็นอาวุธสำคัญที่ทำให้เกิดความสำเร็จขึ้นและผลของชัยชนะนั้นไปสู่ที่ใครความสำเร็จของ 4,000 โครงการที่เกิดความชัยชนะนั้นคือประชาชนคือแผ่นดิน
Thailand's political stability was tested in the public protests against two attempts on constitution amendment in October 1973, which His Majesty referred to as the Day of Great Tragedy, and in May 1992. The two public demonstrations eventually escalated into use of arms and casualties. And before the street face-off got out of hand, it was the moral authority of the sovereign on which the Thai people counted to heal the wounds of differences.
เวลาคนมีการปฏิบัติรุนแรงมันลืมตัวคนไทยเขาไม่รู้ว่าตีกันเพราะอะไรแล้วก็จะแก้ปัญหาอะไรเพียงแต่ว่าจะต้องเอาชนะแล้วก็ใครจะชนะไม่มีใครอันตรายทั้งนั้นมีแต่แพ้คือต่างคนต่างแพ้ผู้ที่เผชิญหน้าก็แพ้แล้วก็ที่แพ้ที่สุดก็คือประเทศชาติประชาชนจะเป็นประชาชนทั้งประเทศ
Tragedy struck again on the 18th of July, 1995, when the widely loved Princess Mother passed away at the age of 95 years old. By His Majesty's royal command, the royal household accorded the Princess Mother with the highest honor for the royal funeral in strict court tradition with Buddhist chanting. Thailand was hit by heavy monsoon rains throughout the mourning period of the royal funeral. The result had been widespread inundation. At the end of August 1995, the Meteorological Department issued a warning of heavy rain and flash floods from the highly devastating tropical storm Lois. Despite his great loss, the mourning monarch's concern for the plight of his subjects never ceased. On his way to attend a funeral prayer rite, His Majesty made time to advise and listen to reports from related government agencies almost on a daily basis. from the highly devastating tropical storm Lois. On the 19th of September 1995, with more areas of the country inundated and Bangkok being threatened by imminent floods, His Majesty granted an audience to representatives from practically all involved government agencies in the auditorium of the Bureau of the Royal Household to discuss the issues. He spent over 2 hours with the people in the audience, advising them to quickly ease the flooding problem in Bangkok and other provinces. After the Princess Mother's death, we lived by her last words that she was aging and death could take place any time. So, cry not when I die. Don't ever cry, because it is only natural that mortals die. But it is normal we mourned her death when she passed away. About a century ago, Queen Victoria of Great Britain addressed King Mongkut as "Sir, my brother." In 1972, Queen Elizabeth II, who was on her first state visit to Thailand, addressed His Majesty with the same term. When the Thai government launched a grand event to mark King Rama IX's Golden Jubilee at the end of 1996, Queen Elizabeth II was on her second state visit to Thailand to take part in that monumental celebration. "Sir, my brother," I repeated tonight with heartfelt sincerity. In the 1940s, it might have been said that the Thai people respected Bhumibol because he was their king. Now, in the 1990s, they respect their king because he is Bhumibol. In 1997, the Thai economy was gripped by the Tom Yam Goong financial crisis. For a country whose economy relied solely on the commercial sector alone, the impact of the economic meltdown was considerably worse than anticipated. Companies, financial institutions, and a large number of people were facing a financial crunch. Many saw their status changed overnight. It was during this trying moment that His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej's wisdom helped awaken the nation from despair with his philosophy of sufficiency economy, a concept and practical way of life that has crystallized over the years from his childhood days, combined with know-how and his long years of working experience since the early days of his reign. It is amazing, really. Many foreign universities, American and elsewhere, got in touch and expressed their interest. After extensive discussions and clarification, they all agreed that this is the cure of the world. The three-stage new theory, tested and introduced by His Majesty the King as early as 1992, is the science of agriculture for small-scale farmers. Primarily, the concept is meant for the farmers to achieve self-sufficiency before moving on to the next stages of stability and prosperity. Through the new theory, a large number of people, once tied down to city life on monthly income and now made redundant, were able to stand on their own feet again. That is why we say sufficiency economy and the new theory are the two elements that will contribute to the country's prosperity. Of course, they require both perseverance and patience. When wars break out in the oil exporting region, the world also feels the impact as oil prices in the world market become volatile. Under the circumstances, Thailand is also affected. Alternative energy has been His Majesty's subject of interest for more than 4 decades. Thus, research, experiments, and invention of alternative energies, including hydraulic energy, wind energy, and solar energy, were carried out at His Majesty's instigation. Such vision could have stemmed from his childhood experiences in World War II, when people in Europe had to live through power supply shortage and food rations. If the world runs out of fossil fuels, there are other alternative energies we can turn to. We only have to work hard to develop new alternatives. Thailand is an agriculture-based economy with endless supplies of crops. His Majesty also concentrated his efforts on producing plant-based energy. In 1986, ethyl alcohol in His Majesty's private project at Jitlada Palace was successfully developed and used to run the vehicles of the royal projects. Subsequently, the experiment was expanded with the result of solid alcohol for commercial purposes. In southern Thailand, in parallel with research, the production of biodiesel from pure palm oil was conceived simply as a small-scale initiative to allow farmers to work together as groups. The experiment was successfully achieved in 1991. At the Brussels Eureka 2001, the 50th World Exhibition of Innovation, Research and New Technology recognized His Majesty's new theory, royal rainmaking, and palm oil-based biodiesel initiatives with its World Outstanding Invention Awards. In 2004, the government's aggressive drug suppression policy sparked off violent retaliations, which culminated in widespread unrest in Thailand's 3 southernmost provinces. Further complications turned it into a chronic problem that continues to threaten the peaceful livelihood of the local people up till today. To this problem, His Majesty advocated understanding, accessibility, and development as the approach to ease their plight.
คำเข้าใจคือต้องเวลาทำงานต้องต่างฝ่ายต้องเข้าใจซึ่งกันและกันนอกจากเข้าใจสิ่งแวดล้อมเข้าใจปัญหาเข้าใจสิ่งที่รอบตัวเราแล้วเข้าถึงนั้นก็คือว่าเมื่อเราเข้าใจเสร็จแล้วเราต้องเข้าถึงปัญหาอย่าไปรีรออย่าไปนั่งรอพรุ่งนี้ก็ถามเถิดอะไรเถิดก็โดนดุมาหลายครั้งแล้วนะทันทีน้ำมันกำลังมาต้องไปทันทีไม่จะรอเสาร์อาทิตย์น้ำมันไม่หยุดเสาร์อาทิตย์เราก็เคยโดนมาแล้วต้องเข้าถึงปัญหานะครับทันทีเลยอย่าไปหนีปัญหาเข้าถึงปัญหานะครับเข้าถึงคนและพร้อมกันนั้นก็ต้องสร้างความเข้าถึงอีกส่วนหนึ่งให้กับคนอื่นด้วยนะครับเมื่อเราเข้าถึงคนอื่นแล้วต้องสร้างความเข้าใจอย่างไรให้เวลาคนอื่นเขามีปัญหาเขาอยากจะเข้าถึงเราด้วยต่างฝ่ายต่างเข้าถึงซึ่งกันและกันนั้นสองคำทั้งเข้าใจและเข้าถึงนั้นมันเป็นสองทางไม่ใช่ทางเดียวและแน่นอนการพัฒนานั้นเป็นสิ่งที่จะต้องเกิดขึ้นจุติขึ้นและการพัฒนาใดๆถ้าตั้งอยู่บนฐานของความเข้าใจซึ่งกันและกันและการเข้าถึงซึ่งกันและกันแล้วการพัฒนาใดๆก็ประสบความสำเร็จอย่างแน่นอนที่สุด
After he fell ill, His Majesty was admitted for medical treatment at Sirirat Hospital, where he has since remained. Nonetheless, as soon as his health permits, he is back at work again. Performing his duties even in ill health, therefore seems to be a common sight for this hardest working monarch of the world. On one occasion, the king was down with high fever, but true to His Majesty's unique character, he set out to paint the red hand as an experiment to see how the fever could affect his painting ability. Many roads in Bangkok were initiated by His Majesty as a result of his countless trips to Sirirat Hospital to visit the ailing Princess Mother and during his own treatments there. As a 10-year-old boy, His Majesty and his elder brother, King Rama VIII, jointly established a comic book-inspired Club Patapum, whose activities included fundraising campaigns. For this activity, the Princess Mother, put up a fundraising box with a French label Pour les pauvres, an exercise intended to teach her two sons the responsibility of tax obligation on the fund raised by making donations for merit making or other public causes or giving based on individual abilities. Since his succession to the throne, His Majesty has continued the practice both in cash and in kind for the benefits of his people and the country's development. During Thailand's reform plan, for example, he donated part of his property in the Central Plains to support the government's effort. Petitions seeking His Majesty's assistance are promptly responded to where possible. The monarch started the tradition of sending New Year's greeting cards to different government agencies and the public in 1987. These always carry ethically oriented messages which differ from year to year.
พูดถึง
Throughout His Majesty's long reign, he has given speeches and royal addresses on countless occasions.
ท่านค่อนข้างจะแก่
But the one occasion that the public eagerly awaits every year is the one on the 4th of December, a day before his birthday anniversary. The royal addresses are valuable to the audience in one way or another, often punctuated by his sense of humor, yet with useful undertones. Occasionally, in the course of the royal addresses, that one is dozing off, this one is having a catnap, the sight renders us speechless because it means that what I've been saying lulls them to sleep. That's odd, but it could well be an honor, meaning our speech had a soothing effect that sends people to sleep. That happens too, but the audience is all alert today. Perhaps the speech isn't good enough because if it is good, it would put the audience in a trance. So it isn't quite effective. People adore His Majesty, whether His Majesty is on a private trip or on his way to attend an important royal ceremony. Big crowds always turn up and have their spot on the royal routes reserved well before his arrival, just to make sure they have a glimpse of their beloved monarch. Throughout his reign, His Majesty's presence makes millions smile and moves them to tears out of sheer bliss. It is at this moment in time that people from all walks of life share the same equal joy. The unified love of the people culminates in His Majesty the King Bhumibol Adulyadej's rightly earned thanks to the virtue of being sovereign that he has faithfully and continuously followed.
ข้าพเจ้ามีความยินดีเป็นอย่างยิ่งที่ได้มาอยู่ในท่ามกลางมหาสมาคม
In 2006, the government mounted a grand event to commemorate the 60th anniversary celebrations of His Majesty's accession to the throne.
ขอขอบใจในคำอวยพรและการเฉลิมฉลองยิ่งใหญ่ที่ทุกคนตั้งใจจัดให้ข้าพเจ้าเป็นพิเศษ
Then, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan honored the King with the first UNDP Human Development Lifetime Achievement Award and, in his citation, paid tribute to the Development King the world regarded with admiration for his sufficiency economy philosophy, which many countries have adopted. Kings and royal representatives the world over converged on Thailand to honor King Bhumibol Adulyadej on that historic occasion. the royal banquet being incontestable in its merit with the produce from the farms of the royal project and the aesthetics of handicrafts of the highest order from the commoner members of the Support Foundation. The concrete success of His Majesty's royal initiatives in sufficiency-based conservation and development efforts were effectively borne out in the opulence of palaces and the splendor of ancient royal ceremonies which underlined the country's age-long history. While in combination with the advances of modern-day development resulted in the culmination of the exquisite royal reception for his royal guests. Throughout his 60-year rule over a faltering state plagued by many ills, the virtues of perseverance, wisdom, and benevolence have helped him through all kinds of hurdles for the benefits and happiness of the Siamese people, true to his first royal words and the vow of all Thai kings.